everyone, my name's Brooke.
I'm Ceana.
I'm Alaina. I'm Kaili.
So I know we've all grown up hearing a lot about history and wars, but did you know that World War II was not just a battle between nations, it was actually an economic war?
What? Tell us more.
Yeah. So World War II was a battle of production and resources, and this helps us explain how the Allies ultimately won.
Yeah, and did you guys know that World War II was an economic war because post-war trading systems were improved, and they also expanded the role of the government in the economy, and this brought a lot of technological advances?
Wow, that's so awesome. I didn't know about that.
So before we go into the next part and explain more, then we're going to go over some vocab to help this make more sense. So we have 4 vocab words to help all of this make more sense. The first, comparative advantage. Second, economic isolationism. Third, gold standard. And fourth, pay-as-you-go taxation. So up next, we're going to explain each one individually. Up first is comparative advantage. Comparative advantage is when two countries trade with another, both stand to benefit. The difference is what makes trade work. In simple terms, comparative advantage means that countries are better off when each one focuses on producing what it can most efficiently make and then trading with the other country. This diagram helps explain it a little bit better. Up next, we have economic isolationism. This was a policy or doctrine of trying to isolate one's country from the affairs of other nations by declining to enter into alliances, foreign economic commitments, international agreements, and generally attempting to make one's economy entirely self-reliant. An easier way of thinking of this is that basically each country would just handle it themselves. Next is gold standard. The gold standard is a system where a country's money is tied to a fixed amount of gold, so paper money can be exchanged for gold at a set rate. In this case, $1 US was equivalent to around 1/35 of an ounce of gold. Last but certainly not least, we have pay-as-you-go taxation. This required employees to deduct income taxes and remit them to the government. This was the idea that workers would be less likely to resent losing money if they never saw it in the first place. So not only is the chapter called World War II, but it's called World War II and Bretton Woods. What even was Bretton Woods?
Bretton Woods was a conference held in New Hampshire in 1944, and it was between all 44 Allied nations.
Wait, 44 Allied nations? That's kind of a lot. I didn't realize there's that many. What did they talk about?
Yeah. So basically what they talked about was how they were going to peg major currencies to the US dollar, which was converted to gold at $35 per ounce.
Wait, so they're not using gold as currency anymore?
Yeah, they're not, because they ensured exchange rate stability and talked about how to foster economic growth post-World War.
What else did they do?
They created the World Bank and the International Money Fund, which sought to to raise living standards of the poorest areas.
Wait, so how did they accomplish that?
They made it so countries who weren't thriving could take out money and use it to boost their economy and nation's well-being, like a bank.
That's really nice of them. Did they do anything else?
Yeah, they made an agreement to end economic isolation instead of isolating other countries, because they realized that by trading with other countries, capital would flow better.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Economics also suggests the outcome of the war can be predicted from the fundamentals. The balance of the resources were in favor of the Allied powers, the winners. Who were the Allied powers? They were the US, the UK, and the Soviet Union.
Wait, but what even are fundamentals?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The fundamentals were the economic concepts such as production, scarcity, and looking at these, we can see how much the country were devoted into the war economically. Some countries were fully mobilized and others weren't.
Now, some statistics for you. The UK and the Soviet Union devoted more than half of their economies to the war, whereas the US only devoted about 40%, and then Italy was on the lower end, only 25%, and then Japan's over here, big dog, they devoted over 75% of their economic assets.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a crazy lot of money.
Okay, going off of fundamentals, have you guys ever wondered what kind of wartime machinery they used during World War II?
Yeah, well, actually, World War II is when aircraft and fighter planes became a really big deal. And a big economic question that was asked was, how do we improve aircraft design to maximize our economic usage, plane lifetime, and most importantly, survival against enemy fire? All right, so in their conferences, colleagues were looking at the underside of the bomber planes that were going out into the field. They're looking at the ones that returned, and they saw that there was a lot of damage in places like the wings and the tail. So their conclusion was, we need to reinforce the wings and the tail. Then Abraham Wald, a refugee from Hungary, came in and saw what none of these amateurs could. He was like, you guys are all wrong.
He was a genius.
Yeah, exactly. He said, none of these planes that are returning have damage to the nose. So obviously, planes that have damage to the nose aren't returning. They're still out in the field, gone. So he said, we need to reinforce these spots. And his point of view, his outlook on these problems is still used by econometricians today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really is a genius.
This image is a model drawing of one of the planes that were used during World War II. The damaged portions of returning planes show locations where they can sustain damage and still return home. Hypothetically, those hit in other places presumably did not survive.
Okay, continuing with more genius people like Wald. Introduced in this chapter are two economists, Bill Phillips and Paul Samuelson, who follow in the footsteps of John Maynard Keynes, a British economist who was introduced in a past chapter, so if you were paying attention, you would know. So a little refresher. John Keynes was a British economist in World War I and the Great Depression. His solution to the Depression was for the government to spend more money to restart the economy, which was not a popular view because more people believed in saving their money, which kind of was the cause of the Depression. He and Harry Dexter White had contradicting views. White was an American government official. White wanted the US dollar to be the primary reserve currency, while Keynes favored an international unit. Moving on to Bill Phillips, he was a macroeconomist. He built on the work of Keynes post-war in 1949, and he built a hydraulic model of the economy, which was initially a teaching aid. And it was so good at stimulating the effect of the potential policy changes that he used it to show how changing government spending taxation affects the circular flow of income.
Here's a picture of the circular flow diagram.
Wow. And lastly, with Paul Samuelson, another person who built on Keynes economics. He was a student in Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and he wrote his 1948 textbook, Economics. He thought Keynes' textbook was genius, yet poorly written. He really liked his textbooks. He emphasized a lot on comparative advantage. There was not a lot of information on him, but he was really critical, and yeah.
Now, if you take anything away from Chapter 8, there's two more key factors that we want to go over. First would be expansion of the welfare state parallel to increase in the role of government in the economy. So governments from advanced nations share of the economy. In 23 years, it rose from 24% to 28%.
Yeah, and the increasing role of the government was reflected in way higher tax taking. Before World War II, the average worker did not pay income tax.
Lucky.
And then after World War II, how did the government expand their income? Through taxes that covered most workers. They came up with the pay-as-you-go taxation, which required employers to deduct income taxes and remit them to the government. They had this mindset that if workers never even saw the money, they were less likely to resent losing it.
Honestly, that's smart, because when I get my taxes, I'm like, wait, I forgot that I paid that in the first place.
They wanted to be more clear about it, and then I forgot who said it, but someone said to like keep it more hidden, like hidden
Yeah.
news, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
So people wouldn't argue about it as much inside another war.
And then you do your taxes and you get your money back and you're like, wow, I just got free money. And I'm like, wait, they took that from me in the first place. Thank you guys for listening. I hope that you guys learned something and took something away from Chapter 8, World War II, and Bretton Woods.
Yep. Now you don't have to go through and read the textbook.
Yeah.
You've learned from our amazing podcast.
Bye.